Hello, everyone, and welcome into the Go 24/7 podcast. My name is Bryce Koon alongside Glen West. And Glen, for you, this is what, the second time in 5 years that you've gotten to wake up on a Sunday in December and say, man, LSU's got a Heisman Trophy winner. I know you weren't with 24/7 at the time, but it's got to be feel pretty good to know that this is, you're not even 30 yet and you've covered two Heisman Trophy winners.
Yeah, I mean, look, you go back to, early 2000s, mid 2000s, early 2010s, mid 2010s. The stigma around LSU was that they always had everything but the quarterback. They had great defenses for so long. They had so many great receivers and running backs and offensive linemen come through here over the years, and they never had the consistency at the quarterback position. So to bring in not one but two quarterbacks over the last 5 years that have given you both, two very good 2-year runs. I mean, look, you had a great 2-year run under Joe Burrow, even that first year where they went 10-3. I think that was a sign that the program was on the rise for the next couple of years. And then obviously with what Jayden did last year, and now with what he's done this year, you've created a trend here, I think, and we'll dive into more of that and how it can affect LSU's future in this pod. But yeah, very, very exciting, obviously, for not only for Daniels and his family, but for LSU, for Brian Kelly, and all those guys being front and center yesterday, basking in that moment, was pretty cool to see.
Really, really cool to see indeed. And hey, if you're just joining us, we appreciate you over on the YouTube channel, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, wherever you might be listening or watching today. Give us a follow, a like, subscribe there. Glenn, we kind of start this off, though, I wanted to do a little self-reflection. The staff does self-reflection of the year. I said, hey, we should also do some self-reflection on Jayden Daniels' Heisman season. Man, there were some multiple moments where I think you and I sat next to each other pretty much the entire season where we were both like, whoa, like you could hear the audible gasp. When you look back at this year, what are some of the moments that you think you're going to cherish about watching this young man play, and just some of the memorable plays? At what point did you feel like, hey, this guy's got a legitimate shot to go win the Heisman Trophy?
Yeah, I would probably say, to answer your second question first, I would say probably after the Florida game where he goes for over 350 yards passing, over 200 yards rushing, first player in FBS history to ever do that. I mean, you and I were in the stands, were in the press box watching that whole game, and yeah, that was just a very that was a special game. I mean, you could see the talent there, and at every aspect of his game come shine through in that win over
Mm-hmm.
Florida. Really dominated that game from start to finish, and obviously with the 85-yard touchdown run, the 50-yard touchdown run, some of the touch passes that he made to Brian Thomas and Malik Neighbors were just exquisite ball placement. And you saw kind of what the culmination of an entire year's worth of work had done for him. And so, but yeah, I mean, look, you could see the groundwork really from the start of the season. I mean, he had a great first half against Florida State, not a great second half against Florida State, but nobody did. And really from there was pretty flawless, I think, in terms of just his consistency from week to week. LSU did so many great things offensively this year, and obviously Jayden was right at the center of all that stuff. And had a chance to talk even before the Heisman ceremony on Saturday. Spoke with Joe Sloan a little bit about Jayden and his development on the field. Spoke with Sherman Wilson, who's one of LSU's big recruiting staff.
Mm-hmm.
Kind of young up and comers in that department, and has done a really fantastic job of building a relationship with Jayden. And those two guys, Sloan and Wilson. They've developed, they've been kind of really at the center, I think, of Jayden's development really since the end of the 2022 season. Remember, Sherman told me that literally 3 days after that Jayden decided he was going to come back to school and play another year, they were already starting these 5 a.m. film study sessions. They were
Yeah.
in the building at 5 a.m. and looking at film, looking at how they could sketch out a plan for him that exceeded what the coaching staff gave him. Even Joe Sloan told me that they gave him a pretty detailed plan. Him and Kelly and Coach Denbrock gave him a pretty detailed outline of how he was going to have to improve over the next year. And then, Jayden, give credit to where credit's due. Jayden went in and he went straight to work and did a fantastic job of first developing, I think, some consistency with his underneath passes, his intermediate and short routes, and making sure those were all crisp, and obviously getting with his receivers back in the early winter days and spring of 2023. They did a fantastic job of just all being available to him whenever he asked, and that's something that Jayden's talked about really even before the season, is how much they kind of spent trying to build that camaraderie and chemistry together between the receivers and the quarterbacks. So that I think that's kind of where the foundation was first laid, and then I think you kind of saw it in the spring. You saw him take a few more chances. You saw him start to get, I think, a little bit more comfortable with his receivers, a little bit more comfortable with what the program was asking of him, and then really just dialed it up like 10 notches over the summer and certainly into the fall. I mean, those guys really hit the ground hard after spring ball, and it's that kind of preparation and work ethic and just constant sticking to your plan, building consistencies and daily habits that Kelly has talked about really since he got here. It really paid off for Jayden, and you saw that with his connection with guys like Malik Neighbors and Brian Thomas and Kyron Lacey, maybe to a lesser degree, but also, he was also a big part of what they did in the passing game. So, I mean, and that's kind of where it all started. And I think that they were just able to build that chemistry out from there. And it bled in, obviously, to the regular season. They had some really great moments as a team. The Missouri win certainly sticks out, and Jayden kind of going out with some bruised ribs and having to fight through it in the fourth quarter with a couple of those touchdown drives. That's another moment that I think you could certainly look at this year and say, man, that was pretty special. That was definitely a Heisman worthy moment that he had. The Ole Miss game, despite its flaws on the defensive side of the ball, Daniels and the offense were exquisite in that game as well. So, there's just so many really solid moments that I think you could point to. But I do think that the Florida game is kind of where it flipped, not only for, I think, guys like me and for you, but certainly for the coaching staff, for Brian Kelly, for LSU. I mean, they had been planning kind of this Heisman campaign for him going into that bye week ahead of the Bama game. But really that Florida game, I think, kind of turned it up a notch and kind of was able to push forward over the next couple of weeks to really get him there. And obviously he delivered in a really big way on the field.
Yeah, I think, when you go back and look, you and I were in the building in Orlando back in September, and, nobody was really good in that game. That's something we can all kind of say. And then, for him to be able to kind of turn it up a notch, because I think it speaks a lot to the resolve that he had. I mean, look, you put all in on that work, like you mentioned, in the offseason. In game one, it doesn't go your way. And it really would have been easy, I think, for a lot of people across the country to abandon the things that he had worked on, say, okay, let's get back to being comfortable. And I think that's, honestly, if we're being real, on our board on social media, I think a lot of the fans expected that. Does Jayden revert back to the 2022 version that had some mistakes and was maybe a little more passive? Instead, I think, and Brian Kelly's mentioned this, the decisiveness like sharpened. That was crazy to watch him do that during the season. Even some of the throws that he was making. You go back to the Ole Miss game. I believe it was Brian Thomas in the corner of the end zone early in that game, and you and I looked and we're like, okay, this is about to be like one of those games where he's going to have to take over. And obviously, if it's not for him, that game's not even close with the way that the defense just kind of let him down. So you look at that. I do agree with you. It's kind of crazy, Glenn. And like in back-to-back seasons with Jayden Daniels at the helm, the Florida game has been a big mile marker in the season. The Florida game, them going down to Gainesville last year, winning that football game, kind of kickstarted them back to get into the running of what they wanted to be able to accomplish. And then, they go to Ole Miss the next week. And then for this season, it kicks off the Heisman campaign. Like, I think if you talk with some folks, and I was, joking back and forth at the A&M game with Cody Warsom, does a great job. LSU Gold. If you haven't checked it out already, you got to check out the docuseries they did. Fantastic work. And he was like, "Yeah, we planned this stuff, but," he goes, "this Florida game kind of accelerated the timeline of when we wanted to put it out because you kind of had to start the marketing and everything there early on." So, you go back at different moments. I think it's the 85-yard touchdown run for me. I mean, that was one against Florida specifically where everyone in the building was like, "Holy cow!" Like, this kid he's doing it himself. A Florida team that really wasn't great this season. You knew LSU was going to have to score, and Daniels literally, it felt like, won that game for them with his play. We could probably say that for all 9 wins. I think, Glenn, it's kind of scary to think about, and as we get into the bowl game, done with the regular season officially, like, do you have an idea of what this team would have looked like without Jayden Daniels at the helm? Does it scare you to think about what the record would be when you look at close games against Missouri that probably would have gone the other way? And that's no knock against Garrett Nussmeier. I think it's just more of a praise of what Daniels was able to do this season.
Yeah, I don't think they get to 9 wins. Certainly, I don't think they have anywhere close to the kind of season they had offensively in terms of leading the country and total offense, and just the consistency that they showed week in, week out. Daniels, I think, bought you. I'd have to go back and really look at it, but I would say he bought you at least 3 or 4 wins this year. I mean, and that's just about what every Heisman quarterback will do for you. If you do,
Yeah.
if you really kind of look back and peel back a team and look at the consistency that they have, a Heisman Trophy kind of guy will get you an extra couple wins where maybe you don't think you're playing your best. I mean, certainly the Florida game is one that I think, look, Florida still put up 35 points. I mean, they
Yeah.
were they were in it for a little bit there, and Jayden just said no thanks. We're gonna run away with it from you guys. But and then obviously the Missouri game. I don't know that you win the Missouri game without Jayden, and certainly his fourth quarter heroics there. Ole Miss. You lost that game, but you're not even in that game.
Yeah.
It's blowout city if without Daniels in that game, and you don't really have a chance in the fourth quarter. And I think you can make that argument certainly for the Alabama game as well. So
Yeah.
there's even the games that LSU lost, you could see the impact that Daniels was having on the team and on the roster. Arkansas is another one,
Yeah.
34-31 win over Arkansas. You only win by that one by 3 points, and Daniels had a really nice day, kind of trying to match KJ Jefferson blow for blow in that one as well. So, yeah, I mean, look, there's always going to be some games in there that, especially when you lose 3 in the regular season, that you wish you could have had back. But there's certainly no argument that you can make that LSU would be a better team without Daniels, or even close to the team that they were this year without Daniels. He was really, really special this year, and I think we'll get into this now a little bit, but I think it sets a trend here going forward for how you can view the quarterback position at LSU. It was definitely a really great moment last night, I think, in terms of changing the tide and in that respect.
Man, perfect segue as we talk about what the Heisman means for the future here at LSU. Look, it's no secret that Brian Kelly has talked about this. A lot of people have had conversations. When you talk about what it means for the future, obviously a lot of people's minds go to what Bryce Underwood could bring on the recruiting trail. But not only that, especially with what Garrett Nussmeier could potentially bring next year. Man, you mentioned it, Glenn. You've been a part of the LSU coverage for a while now. Me being an SEC guy, has always watched LSU from afar. You mentioned as we started the show off, LSU has been a place that's had the skill position, has had the elite defenders. They haven't had the quarterback. Man, now is that starting to buck that trend? Really, I saw some tweets last night. Is LSU transfer quarterback you? Like, is that where you go if you're a transfer quarterback? The next step is the homegrown talent, and you got a guy in Nussmeier next year, potentially Bryce Underwood, if you can bring him in. I think that's the next step in the evolution of the quarterback on this roster. But I think it's safe to say that over the past decade, this has been a place where if you want to go play quarterback at a high level, university, and you want to win a Heisman, you want to be drafted high, which we all assume Jayden Daniels can be, a first round talent at the very least. I think that you have to sit here and say, it's no longer the Ohio States, the Georgias, the, USC's, the world. LSU's firmly in the mix as a place where you can go play quarterback and you can go make a lot of money on Sundays.
Yeah, I wouldn't go as far as decade back. I would go half decade for sure.
Mhm.
Just because a decade ago, it was right in the middle of some of the issues that they had. But yeah, I would say, yeah, that was, that it's exactly what LSU needs in terms of just building that kind of messaging out to quarterbacks of the future, quarterbacks that you're recruiting out of high school, quarterbacks that are in the transfer portal right now. I mean, we've seen LSU tied to a couple of different ones here in the early going of the portal. We'll see if they kind of make a connection there and bring somebody else in to compete with Nuss, and certainly with what Ricky Collins and Colin Hurley will give you next year. But one of the big things I took away really from the last week, and we talked about it a little bit with Sherman last week, and certainly some with Jayden over the last couple days as well that he's talked about. One of the things he said before his Heisman ceremony was he wanted to leave LSU in a better place than he found it. And that was
Mm.
something that was, I know that's kind of a cliche saying that a lot of these really great players wind up, kind of saying over the years. But I think there's no doubt that he did that. And one of the
Yeah.
ways that he's gone about making sure that he has a really strong legacy and a foundation here. Apparently, he's been a really great mentor for a guy like Ricky Collins. And
Yeah.
you mentioned kind of the development piece, the ingrown in the homegrown development angle to all this. I think you nailed it on the head there. It was one of the points that I made in that piece that we wrote this morning. They've proven now that they can go in and they can take a transfer quarterback and that they can make him, a Heisman candidate, a first round draft pick, a future icon in the program. They've done that twice now, and I think that's that'll certainly help LSU when it's out on the road and it needs to find a transfer portal quarterback, whether that's this year, whether it's next year, whether it's just whatever in the future. But you mentioned it, like they have to be able to take some of this homegrown talent, these guys that they bring in as high school recruits, and develop them and make sure that they're ready to take the mantle as the next quarterback for the program as well. I mean, it really goes back to what Brian Kelly has said. He doesn't want to have to build through the transfer portal, and the best way you can do
Mhm.
that is to recruit guys at a very high level and then develop them over a couple year period. And so you've seen that, with Nuss the last 3 years. He's been very patient and sticking around, and I would imagine he'll be given every opportunity to win the quarterback job next year. And whether they bring in some extra competition for him, we'll find that out soon. But even for a guy like Ricky Collins, who I think has a lot of potential and was certainly a very exciting pickup for LSU last recruiting cycle. He's somebody that you can tell is really bought in as well, because he's one of the guys that LSU really likes to bring out when they have their big recruiting visits. He's somebody that's kind of front and center, very likable, very approachable with a lot of these recruits, and you can tell that he's making some really great strides within the program, with his communication, with his development as well. So that's kind of the next step for this group. Developing guys like Nussmeier into those kinds of talents, those Heisman worthy, or at least guys that can get you into more successful seasons. Guys that can help you win championships, and that's going to be part of the pitch here to guys like Bryce Underwood and guys in the future that you're going to be talking to about joining the program at the quarterback position. So, all that, really, it kind of sum up, Jayden was asked, about this exact question yesterday after the ceremony, and he said, well, why not LSU? We've had two guys now come through here and do it at a very high level. That's no longer a one hit wonder like you had with Burrow, that some people could have made that case a couple of years ago. It's a trend now, and I think
Mhm.
you have that trend and you kind of try to recruit towards it, and keeping obviously guys like Joe Sloan and Mike Denbrock and all these guys together on the coaching staff side of things, that'll only really help you in your recruiting as well. But um, certainly having guys like Jayden and guys like Joe Burrow that you can really kind of show other people that, hey, this is what can happen when you come here and you put in the time and the effort and and kind of buy into our process here. You can have similar success, and I think that's kind of what last night proved. And just it was a really good day, I think, for the program as a whole. As you kind of look forward to the quarterback position and what it could look like moving forward.
Obviously, you talk about next season. We mentioned the pitch to Bryce Underwood. I think something too, like even though he didn't win it, Mike Denbrock being one of the finalists for the Royals Award. I mean, that helps. Joe Sloan, as Sonny Ship has pointed out and talked about, Joe Sloan's going to be a candidate for OC jobs across the country. And they're going to look at that. All of that is something that's good. Yes, you never want to lose key pieces like that, but it tells you that you're doing things the right way. When other highly touted teams covet your staff or covet what you have going
Yeah.
on in that system. And like you mentioned, Sherman Wilson, I know that guy. He's a boot guy. He's a Louisiana guy, but what he's being able to do, some point somewhere, some school's going to say, is there any way we can get him to leave LSU for maybe a higher position there? And so it shows that in year three, yes, I will say this: 9-3 in the grand scheme of things. And I mentioned this a couple weeks ago, Glenn, as we wrap it up here. 9-3 in the grand scheme of things is a positive step within the scope of this season. It definitely hurts because you felt like, I mean, you had a Heisman Trophy winner. You don't want to go 9-3 with a Heisman Trophy winner. But man, it really does feel like they're trending in the right direction, not only in the quarterback department, but offensively. And I'm excited because for LSU fans, as we get into the offseason, we'll call it, if there really is such a thing in college football anymore, there's a lot of position battles. I think a lot of storylines to watch. Wide receiver is going to be one that's really, really fun to watch.
Yeah.
Who steps up? The development of Garrett Nussmeier, for the first time, at least for me, you really get to see this guy with here's the reins. All right. This is your job to lose, especially as they get into spring ball. I'm excited personally to watch what this looks like and can they carry over. Now, look, I'm not saying that we should expect Garrett Nussmeier to win the Heisman, but I think also, too, none of us expected to sit here a year ago and say, I think, talk about Jayden Daniels winning the Heisman Trophy. So anything can happen, like you said, if that
Yeah.
work is put in.
Yeah, and then these next 15 practices are going to be really important for Garrett too. I mean, just in terms of, yeah, Jayden hadn't officially made a decision yet. I personally, this is just my educated guess, would be surprised if Jayden ends up playing in the bowl game,
Yeah.
which would give somebody like Garrett a lot of first team opportunities. Give Ricky Collins some first and second team opportunities. So yeah, I absolutely agree with what you're saying there. And one other thing that I think I didn't really mention that I thought was something that should be noteworthy in that piece that we wrote was what. And you kind of mentioned it here on the outset with guys like Cody Worsham and kind of their department that they did a nice job of promoting this campaign for Jayden. This is an opportunity that you can pitch out on the recruiting trail in terms of, hey, if you come here and you succeed and you have the work ethic and all that stuff down to compete at a very high level and produce on the field, those NIL opportunities, those everyone's talking about the NIL and what kind of if LSU's falling behind some other programs in that respect.
Mm.
And I think a big pitching point here for LSU is going to be, well, hey, even if we don't have the deepest pockets, even if we don't think that that's something that will attract every single elite recruit that we target, we can still have that kind of on the back of our minds that this is a place where you can come and you can develop, and on the field your on the field performance will bring those opportunities. I mean, we just saw
Yeah.
Jayden sitting next to the Todd Graves, the owner of Raising Cane's in New York City, and he was wearing a walk-on's lapel for his Heisman Trophy ceremony last night. I mean, he's definitely embraced that part of it, and he's definitely earned every opportunity he's had since he got here. I mean, he's had a big Powerade commercial. He's done a bunch of different
Yeah.
things since getting here and since becoming a superstar here. And I think that's just another angle, to this, and LSU being able to kind of promote their campaign, promote that through him, their brand through him. That's something that can extend to other players that come here in the future. It's something that will certainly, I mean, we talked about it after Joe Burrow won. He'd never have to buy another, beer in Baton Rouge ever again. I think you could certainly make the same case for Jayden Daniels and anybody else in the future that has kind of similar success or comes here and plays hard and leads this team to success. This is the kind of place where if you have success, people will remember for a very long time, and you'll be able to reap the benefits of that for years to come. So I think that's a big part of
Mm.
this as well, when you're talking about bringing in future guys and what that could look like. There was just one other thing that I wanted to point out.
And you mentioned Raising Cane's. You mentioned the Powerade. I mean, having your face on billboards plastered throughout Times
Yeah,
Square doesn't hurt either.
yeah,
Last night too. I mean, it's just really, and I know that we're supposed to be covering the team from objective, but really super kudos to LSU's marketing department. I mean, the way that they have just gone about branding. I mean, that kid Jayden. that was said so many times during the Heisman ceremony last night. I mean, these monikers, and I think too, Glenn, and maybe we dive into this in an article or talk with Sonny about this on a podcast one day as we wrap it up here. It's not LSU doesn't seem like a place where up front where other schools are like, hey, here's the money that you're going to make. But now LSU says, here's the opportunity.
Yeah.
Like, here's the payoff, and I think that does mean for, a lot of kids, kids with the mentality like Jayden of a competitor, I think that's something that as NIL, which I do believe is going to have to be reined in somewhat. I think LSU is positioning themselves, say, hey, look, it's not going to be upfront dollar amounts. We're not, in free agency per se. You kind of have to be, but the opportunity that you have to come here and see some of the opportunities that a guy like Daniels has had, a guy like Malik Neighbors has had, so many other players. It does have them positioned. And personally for me, if I was an LSU fan, if I'm an LSU fan listening to this today, I feel pretty confident about, where LSU's heading in all of the general direction, football program, branding, and NIL opportunities.
Yeah, that's an important piece of all this. And I agree absolutely that, eventually there's going to be some kind of legislation on this and there's not going to be any free agency. Now, whether that's in 3 years, 5 years, 10 years, that's a conversation for another day. But I do think that the way that LSU's approached this is probably the way that you could see it going in the future, like, and
Yeah.
as like kind of the foundation of where, you can go out there and you can say, hey, there are these opportunities for you if you come here, but we're not going to promise you everything just to get you here.
Yeah.
I mean, like,
Yeah.
you got to come in here, you got to work hard, and you've got to earn your spot, earn your playing time, produce on the field, and everything else take care of itself. And you'll be able to take care of you. You'll be able to take care of your family, and whatever else it kind of comes with that. So yeah, I think that's a very good point, and something that LSU I think is certainly recruiting to when they make when they target these guys.
No empty promises. It kind of
Right.
feels like with
Yeah.
LSU. I think that's gonna be something very interesting. But hey, Heisman Trophy Sunday, we'll call it. And look, we still have great more content coming up because while that's going on, Sonny alluded to it in his VIP piece, which makes sure you go get a Go 24/7 subscription, 50% off. Take advantage of that. You can sign up. If you're listening or watching this, we're gonna have a link down in the bio that's gonna take directly to that page so that you can sign up. The staff's been spread thin. Recruiting, transfer portal, Heisman Trophy ceremony, Louisiana State Championships this past weekend. Shout out Ahmad Barrow and Ruston for getting a big title over two future Tigers, Ahmad Barrow and Trades Green, just battled it out down there in New Orleans. And I know, Glenn, that you would that's probably better competition than what the Saints are putting on display here on a Sunday. It's okay. The NFC South as a whole. I know I got the helmet in the background. It's unwatchable. We don't want to watch it.
Don't get me started on the Saints, man. I'm in a good mood.
We
got the Harlan Berry commitment coming next week too, guys. Late next
Yes.
week, and I'm sure we'll be in town for that. And he lives literally, or his school's literally like 5-10 minutes from where I grew up. So we'll make sure to get down there and cover all that stuff as well. So we'll be on top of all of it.
Yes. It's a big time of the year. December, you think football season's crazy. December is absolutely nuts. And hey, on top of that, we have a bowl game. Bowl practice starts this week, so look out for coverage of that. And I believe we're going to be able to attend practice at some point this week too, which is going to be great to get some insight on, who's playing where and what young names to kind of watch out for. Always exciting because while you might not find it exciting right now, this time last year you were, because certain names were kind of using that platform. Malik Neighbors last year used that platform to really catapult into a Bolitnikoff worthy season. We'll just end the conversation right there.
Maybe
Though
you can get a record-breaking season or a record-breaking final game in here coming up.
I will say this, Glenn, as we wrap it up. If Jayden doesn't want to play in the game, okay, understood. You've earned the right not to play. One drive, Jayden to Malik to hook up for the record breaker, and then let's get a timeout, call him off the field, and let the LSU fans down there in Tampa give him a standing ovation. That's what I would like to see, at least.
That'd be cool. Yeah, that'd be
Yeah.
cool. Yeah, I wouldn't complain about that. Now we'll see if it happens, but
We can all, it's wishful thinking. We can all hope and dream,
Yeah.
I guess. But hey, check us out. Go 24/7. Like I said on the website, 50% off deal. Take advantage right now. We got the Harlan Berry commitment coming up. And remember, that 50% off deal will carry you through the Bryce Underwood decision, tentatively still scheduled for January, that you really need to be a part of. And man, it's going to be a ton of fun to cover that as well. Bryce Koon alongside Glen West. Check us out on YouTube, Apple, Spotify, wherever you get your podcasts. We appreciate you tuning in, and we will catch you next time here on the Go 24/7